The bright lights of the dental office felt harsher than usual as I settled into the chair, expecting nothing more than a quick cleaning. But when Dr. Matthew looked into my eyes and said, "Michael, I can't keep this inside anymore. I never stopped caring for you since college," my entire world tilted on its axis. I blinked, the sterile taste of mint still lingering from the rinse, and tried to laugh it off like it was some awkward joke between old acquaintances. Matthew and I had known each other since freshman year at the University of Illinois, back when we shared a cramped dorm room and late-night study sessions that ended in pizza runs. He had always been the quiet, focused one, the guy who aced every exam and volunteered at free clinics on weekends. Now, at 32, he ran his own practice in downtown Chicago, and I was a mid-level attorney at a downtown firm with a fiancée waiting at home. Nothing about this moment made sense. "Matthew, come on?" I muttered around the suction tube still in my mouth, my voice coming out muffled and strained. "You're kidding, right? This is about my wisdom teeth or something." He set the scaler down on the tray with a soft clink. His gloved hands steady, but his dark brown eyes anything but. The fluorescent lights caught the faint stubble on his jaw, and for the first time in years I noticed how the years had sharpened his features into something handsome and serious. "I wish I was," he said quietly, glancing once at the closed door to the hallway. "But every time you walked in here for a cleaning, every time we caught up about work or your engagement to Sarah, it got harder to pretend. I've been in love with you since that winter we stayed up studying for finals. I couldn't keep pretending anymore." My heart slammed against my ribs like it wanted out. The room, usually so calm with its soft jazz playlist and posters of perfect smiles, felt suddenly too small, too bright. I sat up slowly, the paper bib crinkling under me, and pulled the suction tube free. "This isn't funny, man. I'm engaged. I'm straight. You're my dentist." Matthew didn't flinch. He peeled off his gloves and tossed them into the waste bin, the snap echoing in the silence. "I know what you think you are, Michael. But I also know the way you used to look at me back then, before you convinced yourself it was nothing. I'm not asking you to do anything today. I just couldn't live with the lie anymore." I stood up too fast, the chair reclining back with a hydraulic hiss. My legs felt unsteady on the polished tile floor. Outside the window, Lake Michigan glittered under the late afternoon sun. Normal Chicago traffic hummed along Michigan Avenue, and somewhere in the city my fiancée Sarah was probably picking out wedding flowers. None of it matched the storm suddenly raging inside my chest. "I need to go," I said, grabbing my coat from the hook. Matthew nodded, his voice soft but firm. "Take all the time you need. But if you ever want to talk, really talk, my number hasn't changed." I left without another word, the taste of fluoride still bitter on my tongue. By the time I reached my car in the parking garage, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. What the hell had just happened? Matthew, steady, reliable Matthew, had just dropped a bomb that threatened to blow up everything I thought I knew about myself. The drive home through rush-hour traffic blurred into a haze of honking horns and red brake lights. I kept replaying his words, the way his eyes had held mine without shame or hesitation. College memories I had buried deep resurfaced uninvited. The way he used to laugh at my terrible jokes, the late nights when our shoulders brushed while we crammed for exams, the strange warmth I felt whenever he clapped me on the back after a tough day. I had always told myself it was just friendship, the kind of bond guys share when they're young and figuring life out. Now those memories felt dangerous, like they carried a truth I wasn't ready to face. Sarah greeted me at the door of our Lincoln Park condo with a kiss and a glass of wine, her blonde hair pulled back in the messy bun she wore after long days at the marketing firm. "How was the appointment? Everything good with your teeth?" she asked, already turning back to the kitchen where something Italian smelled amazing. "Yeah," I lied, forcing a smile that felt cracked at the edges. "Just routine. Nothing to worry about." But as I watched her stir the sauce, humming along to the radio, a heavy weight settled in my stomach. For the first time in our 3-year relationship, I felt like a stranger in my own life. That night, lying beside her in the dark, Matthew's confession echoed in my head like a heartbeat I couldn't silence. Sleep never came. The next morning at the firm, my colleagues noticed I was off. "Late night, Thompson?" my boss joked during the staff meeting. I nodded vaguely, but inside I was replaying every interaction I'd ever had with Matthew, searching for signs I had missed. Had I been blind, or had I chosen not to see? The question gnawed at me through depositions and client calls, turning every familiar routine into a minefield of doubt. By Friday, I still hadn't called him. Instead, I threw myself into work, staying late at the office until the cleaning crew arrived. Sarah noticed the distance but chalked it up to wedding stress. "We'll get through it," she said one evening, squeezing my hand across the dinner table. Her touch felt warm, familiar, safe. Yet when I closed my eyes, it was Matthew's steady gaze I saw. That weekend I drove aimlessly along the lakefront, the October wind whipping off the water and carrying the scent of coming winter. I parked near Navy Pier and walked until my legs burned, trying to outpace the confusion. Part of me wanted to pretend the appointment never happened, to go back to the life I had planned. Marriage, kids, the white picket fence version of success my conservative parents had always pushed. But another part, small and terrified, whispered that maybe Matthew had handed me a mirror I had avoided for years. Monday morning I found myself back at the dental office. Not for an appointment but just sitting in my car across the street, watching patients come and go through the glass doors. I told myself I was only curious, that I needed closure. When Matthew stepped out for lunch wearing a navy sweater and jeans instead of his white coat, something in my chest tightened. He looked up, saw my car and paused. For a long moment neither of us moved. Then he crossed the street. "You came back," he said simply when I rolled down the window. "I don't know why," I admitted, my voice rough. Matthew smiled, the same gentle smile that used to make college seem bearable. "That's a start, Michael. That's more than enough for now." We didn't talk long. Just enough for me to agree to coffee after his shift. As I drove away, the city lights beginning to flicker on, I realized the appointment hadn't ended when I left his office. It had only just begun. Coffee turned into dinner the following week. Then long walks along the Chicago Riverwalk where the wind off the water made conversation feel safer somehow. Matthew never pushed, never demanded answers. He simply listened as I stumbled through half-formed thoughts about my life, my engagement, the version of myself I had built like a careful legal brief. I've spent years convincing everyone, including me, that I was the guy who had it all figured out. I told him one crisp evening as we sat on a bench near the Wrigley building. Now it feels like the whole case is falling apart. He nodded, his shoulder brushing mine. "You don't have to figure it all out tonight. Or ever if you don't want to. But you deserve to know who you really are, Michael. Not who your parents expect, not who Sarah needs. Just you." His words lodged somewhere deep inside me, warm and terrifying at the same time. That night I went home and stared at the engagement ring Sarah had picked out together. The simple platinum band sitting on the dresser like an accusation. I thought about calling off the wedding, about the conversations I would have to have with my parents in their tidy Oak Park house, about the looks I would get at work if word ever spread. The fear was so sharp it made my hands shake. Sarah sensed the shift before I even spoke it aloud. "You've been distant since that dentist appointment," she said over breakfast one Saturday. Her coffee mug paused halfway to her lips. "Is everything okay at work? Or with us?" I wanted to lie again, to say it was just stress. Instead I heard myself say, "I need some time to think. About everything." The words hung between us like smoke. She didn't cry, not then, but the hurt in her eyes cut deeper than any argument we had ever had. She left for her sister's place that afternoon, giving me the space I had asked for without really understanding why. Alone in the condo, I called Matthew. "I told her I needed time," I said when he picked up. My voice cracked on the last word. "I'm proud of you for that," he replied softly. "It takes courage to even say it out loud." We met at a quiet cafe in Wicker Park, the kind with mismatched chairs and local art on the walls. Over steaming mugs of black coffee, Matthew shared pieces of his own story. The years after college when he had come out to his family in small-town Indiana, the initial rejection, the slow rebuilding of bridges. It wasn't easy, he admitted, tracing the rim of his cup. But living honestly was the only way I could breathe. Listening to him, I felt both envious and scared. My own parents had raised me on Sunday sermons and lectures about traditional values. My father, a retired police captain, still used phrases like real men without irony. The thought of sitting them down and saying the words made my stomach churn. Yet every hour I spent with Matthew chipped away at the wall I had built. He made me laugh with stories from his practice, the patient who tried to flirt with him using bad pickup lines, the kid who drew him a picture of a superhero dentist. He asked about my cases, my dreams beyond billable hours, and listened like my answers mattered more than anything else in the world. The betrayal came from an unexpected direction. My best friend since law school, Derek, stopped by the condo one evening with beers and the excuse of watching the Bears game. Halfway through the second quarter, he set his bottle down and looked at me sideways. "Sarah told me you're having doubts. Said you've been hanging out with your dentist a lot." That guy Matthew. His tone carried an edge I had never heard before. "You're not, turning into something else, are you?" The word hung unspoken but crystal clear. I felt heat rise in my face. "It's complicated, Derek." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Complicated? Come on, Mike. We've known each other 10 years. If you're going through some midlife crisis or whatever, fine. But don't drag Sarah through whatever this is. And honestly, if you're thinking about that lifestyle, you might want to keep it quiet at the firm. People talk." His words landed like a slap. Derek had always been the loud, loyal one. The guy who had my back in every bar fight and courtroom drama. Now he looked at me like I was a stranger. When he left early, citing an early meeting, the silence in the condo felt heavier than ever. I sat on the couch staring at the TV without seeing it, Matthew's face flashing in my mind alongside Derek's cold stare. That night, I drove to Matthew's apartment in Logan Square without calling first. He opened the door in sweatpants and an old college hoodie, surprise flickering across his face before it softened into understanding. "Rough day. Rough everything," I said, stepping inside. We talked until the city outside grew quiet. He didn't offer solutions or promises, just space and the steady presence that had always grounded me. When I finally stood to leave, he caught my hand for a brief second. "Whatever you decide, Michael, you're not alone in this." Driving home through empty streets, I realized the confession in the dental chair had cracked open a door I could no longer close. The question wasn't whether I could go back to the life I had planned. The question was whether I still wanted to. The holidays arrived like a storm I wasn't prepared for. My parents invited us to Oak Park for Thanksgiving, the same house where I had grown up with football trophies on the mantle and Bible verses framed on the walls. Sarah and I had already decided to keep our break private for now, so I showed up alone, claiming she had a work deadline. My mother hugged me too tightly, her perfume the same floral scent I remembered from childhood. "You look tired, sweetheart. Everything all right at the firm?" "Fine, Mom," I lied, helping carry the turkey to the table. My father carved with military precision, asking pointed questions about my latest case. Every word felt like walking through a minefield. When my younger sister mentioned she had seen Matthew's practice featured in a local magazine, I nearly dropped the mashed potatoes. "He's doing well for himself," I managed, keeping my voice neutral. Later that night, after the pie and football, my father cornered me in the garage while we put away the folding chairs. "Your mother worries about you," he said gruffly. "Says you seem distracted. You and Sarah still on track for that June wedding?" I stared at the concrete floor, the oil stains from years of his old truck. "We're figuring things out, Dad." He clapped me on the shoulder, the gesture meant to be reassuring but landing like a warning. "Figure fast, son. A man needs a good woman and a clear path. Don't let life get complicated." The drive back to the city felt endless. I called Matthew from the car, voice low even though no one could hear. "I almost told them tonight. Almost. Come over," he said without hesitation. "I've got leftover Chinese and bad holiday movies." His apartment smelled like garlic and soy, the TV flickering with some old comedy. We ate straight from the cartons, shoulders touching on the couch, and for a few hours the weight lifted. When the movie ended, Matthew turned to me. "You don't have to rush anything, Michael. But if you ever want to talk to them, I'll be right there with you." The offer lodged in my throat. No one had ever said those words to me before. Work became my escape and my prison. Derek avoided me in the hallways, offering tight nods instead of our usual banter. Whispers followed me to the break room. One afternoon, a senior partner pulled me aside. "Everything okay at home, Thompson? You seem off your game lately." His eyes held the same cautious distance Derek had shown. I assured him everything was fine, but inside I felt the ground shifting beneath my feet. Christmas brought another round of family obligations. This time Sarah joined for appearance's sake, her smile brittle at the edges. At the big dinner, my mother asked when we were setting a date. Sarah looked at me, waiting. I mumbled something about next year and changed the subject, but the tension followed us home like a shadow. That night she packed a bag. "I love you, Michael," she said quietly at the door. "But I can't keep pretending I don't see you pulling away. When you figure out what you want, call me." The condo felt cavernous after she left. I sat on the floor surrounded by half-packed wedding favors and cried for the first time since the dental appointment. Then I drove to Matthew's place at 2 in the morning. He opened the door in pajama pants, hair sleep-tousled, and pulled me into a hug without a word. We stood like that in the hallway for a long time, his heartbeat steady against mine. The new year brought a fragile kind of hope. Matthew and I started seeing each other more openly. Not dates exactly, but shared dinners, museum visits, long talks on his balcony overlooking the snowy city. He introduced me to his small circle of friends, people who accepted us without question. For the first time I felt seen, not as the successful lawyer or the reliable son, but as myself. Yet the fear never fully left. One evening my sister called, voice tight. "Mom found an old photo of you and Matthew from college in a box. She's asking questions, Michael. What's going on?" I hung up and stared at the ceiling, heart racing. The moment of truth was coming faster than I wanted. Matthew sat beside me on the couch, his hand resting lightly on my knee. "Whatever happens, we face it together." The words gave me courage I didn't know I had. The confrontation happened on a cold February evening at my parents' house. I had asked them to meet me there alone, saying I had news about the wedding. When I arrived, both were waiting in the living room, my mother's hands folded tightly in her lap. I didn't ease into it. "I'm not marrying Sarah," I said, voice steadier than I felt. "And I'm seeing someone. His name is Matthew." The silence that followed was deafening. My father's face turned red, then pale. "What kind of joke is this, Michael?" "It's not a joke, Dad. It's the truth I've been running from for years." My mother started crying softly. "We raised you right. This isn't who you are. That dentist friend of yours, he's confused you somehow." I tried to explain, but every word seemed to hit a wall. My father stood abruptly. "If you choose this path, don't expect us at your door. A man's life is supposed to mean something: family, legacy. Not whatever this is." I left before the yelling escalated. Driving through tears, I couldn't stop. Matthew met me at his place with hot tea and no questions. He simply held me while I shook. "They need time," he whispered. "Some people always do." The weeks that followed were brutal. My parents stopped answering calls. My sister sent a single text, "Give them space." At work, Derek finally cornered me in the parking garage. "I heard you called off the wedding." For him, the disgust in his voice cut deep. "You're throwing away everything, Mike." "For what?" I looked at the man who had once been like a brother and felt only sadness. "For the chance to be honest, Derek." He walked away without another word. The betrayal stung more than I expected, but it also clarified something. The people who truly mattered would stay. Matthew's family proved kinder. His parents drove up from Indiana one weekend, nervous but determined to meet me. Over brunch at a quiet cafe, they asked gentle questions and shared stories about Matthew's childhood. His mother hugged me goodbye. "We just want our son happy," she said. "And he looks happier than I've seen him in years." Spring arrived with tentative green buds along the lakefront. Matthew and I took long walks, talking about everything and nothing. One evening on the pier he stopped and turned to me. "I don't need labels or timelines, Michael. I just need you, however much of yourself you're ready to give." I kissed him then, the first real kiss, soft and uncertain under the city lights. Felt like coming home after years at sea. Work suffered. I missed deadlines snapped at paralegals. The senior partner called me in for a chat. "Personal issues are one thing, Thompson, but if they affect performance, the implication was clear." I left the meeting with a warning in my file and a knot in my stomach. That night Matthew cooked stir-fry and listened while I vented. "Maybe it's time for a change," he suggested gently. "You always talked about starting your own practice someday, helping people who actually need it." The idea scared me, but it also sparked something alive. For the first time, I imagined a future that included both my career and this new, honest version of myself. Summer brought longer days and harder choices. I gave notice at the firm after a particularly grueling month of sideways glances and whispered conversations. The partners wished me well with polite handshakes that felt hollow. Packing my office, I found an old photo of Sarah and me at the company picnic. I sent her a message, "I hope you're happy. I'm sorry for the pain." She replied hours later, "I am. And I hope you find what you're looking for." The kindness in her words loosened something tight in my chest. Matthew celebrated my decision with tickets to a Cubs game. We sat in the bleachers eating hot dogs and cheering like any other couple, and for the first time I didn't scan the crowd for familiar faces. When the seventh-inning stretch came, he leaned over and kissed my temple. "Proud of you," he murmured. The simple words meant more than any promotion ever had. My parents remained silent until my mother called one humid August afternoon. "Your father's not ready," she said, voice trembling. "But I am. I want to meet him, Matthew." We met at a neutral restaurant in the suburbs. My mother arrived early, clutching her purse like a shield. Matthew shook her hand with quiet respect and talked about his work, his values, the way he cared for me. By dessert, she was laughing at his stories. When we walked her to her car, she hugged me tightly. "It's not what I pictured," she whispered. "But you look at peace. That's what matters." My father's silence hurt, but I refused to let it define me. Fall brought new beginnings. I opened a small practice focused on family law for underserved communities. The office was tiny, above a coffee shop in Andersonville, but the clients who walked through the door needed help I could actually give. Matthew supported every late night and every victory. One crisp October evening, he took me back to the dental office after hours. The chairs were empty, the lights dimmed. "This is where it all started," he said, leading me to the same room where he had made his confession. I was terrified that day, but I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I pulled him close, the familiar scent of antiseptic and his cologne wrapping around me. "I'm glad you did." We stood there a long time, the city humming outside. The journey had been messy, full of tears, arguments, and moments I thought I wouldn't survive. But every step had led here to this quiet certainty. Winter arrived with its usual bite, but inside the life Matthew and I were building felt warm and steady. My small practice was growing, word spreading through community centers and support groups. Clients told me their own stories of identity and courage, and I listened with a new depth born from my own experience. Matthew's dental office thrived too. He even hired a new hygienist who quickly became a friend to both of us. We spent Thanksgiving with his family in Indiana, a loud, loving gathering where I was welcomed without reservation. Driving back through the snowy fields, Matthew reached over and took my hand. "Next year maybe we'll host at our place," he said softly. The word, "our," settled over me like the first real snow of the season, beautiful and inevitable. My father finally called on Christmas Eve. His voice was gruff, hesitant. "Your mother showed me pictures. You look good, son. Happy." He cleared his throat. "Maybe we can have coffee sometime. Just the three of us." It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a door cracking open. I accepted, tears blurring the holiday lights outside my window. Matthew and I rang in the new year on the roof of his building, wrapped in blankets and watching fireworks bloom over the skyline. As the clock struck midnight, he turned to me, snowflakes catching in his dark hair. "I love you, Michael. Every version of you." "I love you too," I answered, the words no longer scary but simply true. Looking back at the man who had once been my dentist, my college friend, and now my partner, I realized the shocking confession in that bright dental chair had been the kindest gift anyone had ever given me. It had forced me to strip away the lies and step into a life that finally fit. The journey hadn't been easy. There were still nights when old fears whispered, but every step had been worth it. True or false? One honest confession from the right person can rewrite your entire future for the better.